Hi, Phanessa here. In this video I'm going to demonstrate how to knit this super chunky fingerless glove or a hand warmer. So I'm using Hobby Yarns. This is their Amigo. Information for everything I'm using is in the description box as well. So you just need one ball. This is what's left after making one. You'll need a set of needles. Now you can use double pointed needles because this is a smaller circumference, so the 16-inch will not fit all the way around. You can use the magic loop method, or you can use double pointed needles. So you do need two different sizes, a US 13 and a US 15, so that's 9 and 10 millimeters. I'm going to cast on using this just to show you how to use the double pointed needles, but I'm actually going to use my circular needles. Okay, a pair of scissors, tape measure, and a tapestry needle to weave in your ends. And you'll need a stitch marker. You'll also need a stitch holder or scrap yarn to hold your thumb stitches. For more information on the pattern, see the description box below. All right, let's get started. So I'm going to cast on 22 stitches. So this is 9 stitches for every 4-inch. With your smaller needle size, this is the US 13, 9 millimeters. You'll cast on 22 stitches, so leave a long enough tail so that you can cast on 22 stitches. Grab your yarn and open your thumb and forefinger and swing it out. Place your needle on the inside of this loop here. I like to hold this so it doesn't slip off. You're going to come around this side to the thumb under the first loop, and then you're going to come over here top down, and then you're pulling this loop here through the thumb like that. Let go. That's 2 stitches. You can start with a slip knot if it's easier for you. So again, under, over, and through the thumb. You can check out my how to knit playlist if you need a slower video on the long tail cast on. So I have 3 needles I need to cast on, and I'm going to cast on 22 stitches. So I'm going to cast on 7 stitches for each needle, and then one more on one of the needles. It doesn't matter which one. 5, 6, 7. Okay, grab your next needle. Okay, I'm just going to use this new needle instead of the old one. Okay, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Okay, so that is my second set of stitches. So this needle I'm going to cast on 8 stitches because I want 22 stitches total. Okay, so that's 8. If you're using a circular needle and you're using the magic loop, just go ahead and cast on 22 stitches onto your circular needle. Okay, so now you want to join your round. So this is your working yarn. You're going to join to this one here. Okay, you want to make sure that these are in the inside, the bottom part. And okay, so now we're going to join. So that's the tail. Get that out of the way. Can't find my stitch marker, so I'm going to use this ring. I'm going to place it. So I'm going to insert my needle, the spare needle, into the very first stitch, which is right here. So I'm working a knit stitch, so you want your yarn in the back. Make sure you slide your yarn closer to the tip, and then you're just going to knit that very first stitch. So the very first stitch you should pull tight so that you don't have a gap. We've knit all the stitches onto this needle. With the free needle, you're going to start knitting from the next double pointed needle. So move your stitches close to the edge. Oh, wait. So we knit this stitch. We want to now purl this stitch. Okay. Next stitch, knit, purl. So I'm going to repeat this across this needle. Now I'm ending with a purl stitch, and I freed this needle. Sorry, I'm switching between continental and traditional, just so if you knit one or the other, you can see how both of them are done. So knitting continental, you'll see me hold the yarn on this side, and knitting traditional, you'll see me hold the yarn on this side where I'm throwing my yarn, basically. Okay, so I'm going back to English. This is my purl stitch. So I'm going to slide this closer to the edge, and then I'm going to knit from this needle. Oh, I did say I was going English, huh? Naturally, I'm a continental knitter, so naturally that's where I want to put my yarn. Okay, purl, and then knit. So I'm going to continue all the way across this needle, and this is our last needle. So I'm done with my first round. So you can grab a stitch marker and mark the very first stitch. I'm just going to mark it right here. So you basically continue working in the round using the spare needle to knit, and when you free up the next needle, you'll use that one to knit. Okay, row 2. Try and keep these in the center so you don't lose them. So I marked right here. I'm at the beginning again. I'm just going to continue. Okay, I'm at the last stitch. Okay, so you're going to continue working in the round for 15 rounds. So the way you count your rounds, you start with this one. This is actually the cast on round, but we're going to count that as number 1. So 1, 2, 3, and then the fourth one is on your needle. So knit for 15 rounds, and then we will switch on over to our larger needle size and start working our thumb. So I'm going to show you how I like to knit in a small circumference. So the casting on will be the same. Let me just transfer all of this to, so I'm on the last needle. I want to make sure that I have these two bent, so I just pulled the cable out from here somewhere in the center, just eyeball it. And then the needle that I'm going to work with, what I like to do is push the needle out in between these two stitches, so leave 1 or 2 stitches on the needle, and then this is how I like to knit. So this is the modified version, I guess you want to say. I started doing this when I just couldn't deal with double pointed needles when I closed my beanies, and I found that this worked well for me. So in a lot of my patterns, you'll see that I have a video link to the modified magic loop method, and this is what it is. Okay, so now I'm at the beginning of the round again. Since we are working in the round with a circular needle, you can place a stitch marker on your needle. So again, I just pull the cable out here somewhere, slide this over so that I can knit with it, with the working needle, I like to push the needle out and leave 1 or 2 stitches. And then this is how I knit. This is much easier for me. So it's really, find what works for you. Everybody is different. Okay, when I get through all of the stitches here, I'm just going to do the same thing. So I'm going to just pull out a cord, slide this over, and then push the needle out, leaving 1 or 2 stitches. So I'm going to knit 15 rounds, and we'll start separating for the thumb. Okay, so now we're ready to separate the thumb section. I have 15 rounds. I'm going to use 3 stitches for the thumb. So you want to switch out to your US 15, so the larger needle size. Going for the very first round, I'm just going to knit all the stitches. But what I want to do is knit 3 stitches and then place a marker so that I know those are my 3 stitches for the thumb. Okay, so I'm going to knit every stitch all the way around. I'm almost at the end. I have a couple of more stitches. Okay, move my marker. Okay, so now we're going to increase 2 stitches. So we're always going to knit the first and last stitch between these markers. So I'm going to knit the first one. Now I'm going to work a left leaning increase. And make 1 left. You want to grab your needle and come behind this center bar here. So if you pull this apart, there's this bar here, and that's the same stitch that's going from this loop to this loop. Okay, so if you pull on it, it'll tug these loops. So you want to grab your right hand needle, place it behind that horizontal bar, and then you're going to knit this from the front. Okay, so through the front loop. It gets a little tricky here. Okay, you want to knit through the front loop. Okay, then we're going to knit 1 and then work a right leaning increase. You want to pick up this bar from the front. So in this one here, we went from the back. This time you're going to pick up this bar from the front, like that. I'll show you that again. So here's that horizontal bar. Pick it up from the front, and then we're going to knit this through the back loop. Right through the back loop, and knit the stitch. Okay, knit the next stitch, and then just knit every stitch around. So our increases are always going to be right after the first stitch and before the last stitch between those 2 markers. Okay, I'm at the end here. For the next round, the 3rd round, we're just going to knit every stitch. So here are the thumb stitches. I'm just going to knit them. I'm not increasing this round. Okay, now for the 4th round, we're going to work another increase. So again, we're always going to increase after the first and before the last, between the markers. So this is my last stitch. Always knit the very first one. Okay, and work a left leaning increase. We're picking it up from behind and we're knitting it through the front loop. And I'm going to knit until 1 stitch before the marker and work right leaning increase. Okay, so this is the last stitch. I'm going to pick up this bar from the front and I'm going to knit through the back. You can increase these stitches however you like. So I'm not going to be increasing anymore. I'm just going to knit 2 more rounds and then I'm going to place the thumb stitches on hold. If you still want to increase it, you can increase it after you're working just one round of knit stitches, and then you can just knit around until you like the height, and then you can place it on stitch holders. So for me, there is 7 stitches. So I'm going to work, this is the 5th round, and I'm going to work the 6th round after that and see where I'm at, if I want to continue or place my stitches on hold. Okay, so I have a total of 6 rounds, and it's not quite tall enough. Okay, so I think I'm going to knit one more round, so a total of 7 rounds. Okay, so now I'm going to place these 7 stitches on a stitch holder, or you can just use scrap yarn. So just remove the stitches off of your needle. Again, if you're using scrap yarn, just put it on a tapestry needle and then remove these stitches off your needle. Just insert your needle purlwise so that you don't twist the stitches. And then if you have your scrap yarn, just make a knot, tie it up so that it doesn't come undone. Okay, so I'm going to knit 8 rounds and then I'm going to bind off. You can always place a marker if you're having trouble keeping track of your rounds. So for this very first one, there's a huge gap, so I'm going to tighten that up a little bit. Okay, so this is going to be my first round. You can just grab a stitch marker and mark that. You can do it on the next round, but I'll just place a marker here, just so I know that that's my first round, so that I can work 8. Once you figure out the circumference that you want, it's really easy to just customize to your liking. You can go all ribbing or no ribbing, add in some decorative stitches. If you use the duplicate stitch like I did here, you can add almost anything if you haven't incorporated a stitch or different style into your work. I forgot to place my marker here, so I'm going to add my marker back. Okay, so I am at the end. I'm going to knit this one and pull tight right there, and then I'll just continue on for 7 to 8 rounds. So I worked 7 rounds, if I count from my marker here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is the 7th round, and I feel like it's still a little bit short, so I'm just going to work one more round. All right, I've completed 8 rounds. I'm ready to cast off. Okay, so you want to bind off loosely. So you're going to knit 2 stitches, and then you're going to grab the first knitted stitch with your other needle and then just pass it over the just knitted stitch. Okay, so now the repeat is knit 1 and then pass the last stitch over. Knit 1, pass the last stitch over. Okay, you're going to repeat that all the way around until you've bind off all of the stitches. My favorite way to bind off is grabbing a crochet hook. Oh, that's twisted. Placing it in the loop and then just insert, just like I would a needle, yarn over. So grab the yarn and pull it through all those loops and drop. Okay, insert, yarn over, pull through and through. I just don't like fiddling with needles when I'm binding off. That's probably why I'm not so fond of double pointed needles. Just gotta get used to it, but I keep finding shortcuts. And why not, right? Okay, I've got just 4 more stitches left. Oops. Last stitch. I'm going to cut my yarn, and then I'm going to pull this out. Grab my tapestry needle. So we've got our tail coming out of this loop here, this loop. So we want to find the first loop over here, which is this stitch here. You can see that half and this half. So right through the top here is the first stitch. So you want to insert from the front to the back, gently pull, and then we're going to go back into this loop where this one came out of. What that does is mimic the stitches that you have all around. Okay. Now I find that there's always a slight hole in the back between those. It actually looks pretty good right here, but more often than not I do find a tiny little gap. So what I do is just run my needle through, and it kind of helps pull it together. Okay, so then you just weave in your ends. So I'm just following the loops in this stockinette pattern. Okay, now we're ready to work on the thumb. So remember we had 7 stitches. We're going to pick up 2 more on the inside right here. So I'm going to place these stitches back on my needle. Again, try not to twist them, so you want to just pull them out without twisting them. Okay, so you want to just pull them out just like you did when you placed them on the holder. Don't twist your stitches. Again, you can do this with double pointed needles. I'm just going to work it with this. So we're going to pick up 2 stitches from here and here. So following this loop here, it comes down here and then right through here, and it comes back this way. So we're going to pick up right on top of this one. So okay, so follow the last stitch here, just follow the loop that comes over and this way, and then you want to pick up right on top of that stitch, and you want to go in between this row here or column. Okay, so that's where you're going to pick up that stitch. Same thing on this side. You're going to follow this loop. So here's the horizontal bar that it's coming down here through there and then right through here. That's where I'm going to pick up the next one. This is going to be just a little bit tricky because it's so small, but I still refuse to use double pointed needles. So I'm going to go ahead, follow this and pick this up, and then I'm going to pick this one up with this needle. Okay, so I'm going to come over here, pick that one up. Okay, and you can start here, but I'm just going to transfer that one over so I can start here. Grab your yarn. Let me just place my marker. So you're going to insert your needle, take your yarn, make a loop, and then just pull that through. Okay, so I'm just going to knit, make sure that's tight. That's the tail there. So I think I'm going to knit 2 to 3 rounds. So I twisted that stitch right there. So let me move it back, knit that one, and then I'm just going to knit 2 to 3 rounds. And then you can place your thumb in there to see how you like it. And then you can decide to stop and cast off or continue. So I'm just going to show you how to do this with double pointed needles. So I have 9 stitches. I'm just going to place 3 stitches over 3 needles. Okay, so I'm on this needle here. I'm going to grab my spare. Slide that down. And I'm going to knit these 3 stitches. Okay. Slide this one over. And knit around. Just want to make sure that's tight. So I'm happy with this. So I'm going to finish off the 3rd round and then cast off. Okay, this is actually my last stitch here. Okay, so now we're going to cast off, knit 2, and then pass the first knitted stitch over the just knitted stitch. Again, I'm just going to do this once, and then I'm going to use my hook. Okay, just insert your hook as if to knit, yarn over, and pull through all the loops. Last stitch. Okay, we're going to do the same thing. Cut this off, pull it through. Okay, so pull this through. And we're going to do the same thing. This is my last stitch here. It's a little wonky, but you can fix that with blocking. Just wet it and shape it. So this is the first stitch here. I'm going to insert my needle, gently pull, and then go back into the loop that your tail came out of. Okay, so there you have your sort of invisible join. And then just weave in your ends. So if you have gaps on the thumb, you can close it up when you weave in your tail. And I recommend that you do weave in your tail, just because when you work the duplicate stitch, it's going to catch on anything that's inside. I'm just following a loop here. And then you want to kind of tighten it. Just kind of close that up. So there's a gap here. I'm just going to pull those stitches together and work on this side as well. Okay, so I weaved in all of my ends, and you can see that this part right here is tighter, just because I pulled that a little bit closer together. Okay, so I've closed the gaps here. So you're done if you are not going to add anything, but if you would like to add this heart here, we'll work on that next. So just make sure that you're putting it on the right side. So this one I want to make sure my thumb is on this side, since this one I put the design on my left hand. This one's going to go basically on my right hand. Okay, so looking at the chart, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it's 7 stitches out, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 stitches down. Okay. So you want to block off a 7 by 7 area. Okay, so this is my center stitch here. So I want my 7 here. So there's going to be about 3 stitches on either side. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3 and mark this 3rd stitch. And then I'm going to start on the stitch right above it. So I marked 1, 2, 3. I'm going to start here. So we're going to start at the center bottom and then go back and forth. So cut your contrasting color yarn. So this is about 68 inches. Okay, so you're going to start from the inside. So put your needle inside, and so this is the stitch that we marked. You want to make sure that you come out of that same stitch. That doesn't mean we're working on that stitch, but that's the start of the stitch above it. Okay, you can see here, this is the V, so it starts right in the center of this one that we marked. Okay, so pull that up, and you want to make sure that you leave a tail so that you can weave in the ends on the inside. Okay, so now we're going to follow the stitches. So if you look at the stitch here, the stockinette stitches have these V shapes. So looking at this stitch here, that's the one we want to duplicate. It goes under the stitch right above it. Okay, so you're going to insert your needle through this one here. And if you're interested in just a duplicate stitch, I have a video tutorial just for that. So right here, that's where we came out of. That's where it's going to go back in to create that V shape. And then you want to think about the next one that you're going to work. So I'm going to work 3 stitches right above this one. So I'm going to go, I like to start from this side, go back and forth, but it's really up to you. Just make sure that you're doing one row at a time. So I'm going to start with this one. So when I insert my needle back down here, I want to make sure that it comes back up here. I usually do that in one motion, but I'm going to do that in 2 steps so you can see. Okay, make sure you don't pull too tight. Okay, there's your very first duplicate stitch. So the row above, these 3 stitches are going to be duplicated. So I want to start with the very edge because it's really close to this one. Okay, we're looking at this stitch here. Remember, you start at the very tip, the bottom tip where they both meet. So that's where you want to start. Okay, again, the stitch right above it is where you're going to insert your needle because you want the yarn to follow the direction of the stitch. Okay, now back in here. And then we're going to come out of this one right here. Okay, right here. Earlier I went down and then back up. I'll show you that again. So I'm just going to go down. Okay, now I'm going to go over to the next stitch here. Okay, right there. And through the stitch above, just like we've been doing. Okay, we're following this stitch here. Okay, now I'm going to do this next step. These next 2 steps I've been showing you in 1 step. It's whatever you're comfortable with. Okay, so again, we want to come back down here. And then we want to come out of here because this is the very next stitch that I'm going to work or I'm going to duplicate. Okay. I like to make sure that this is right so I don't have to pull back so many stitches. Okay, so this very next stitch is here. So I'm going to go right above. Okay, so now the next row is going to have 4. So because I'm already on this side, I'm going to come back out here to work the stitch here. This is the stitch that's right above it to the left. Okay, so I'm going to go down here, and then I'm going to immediately come back out here. Okay, now I'm going to start at the very first one on the next row, following the stitch here out this way. So you want to insert your needle in the stitch above it. Okay, now I'm going to go in this direction, so the next place I want to come out of is right here. So I'm going to go in here and come out of here. Okay, next stitch. If it gets too tight, just pull it out a little bit. Okay, the next stitch is right here. So you want to come out of there. Now that I'm almost done with this one, I want to think about where my next one is going to be up here. So it's going to be 1 stitch over. So I want to come out right here. Now I want to go in this direction. My next one is just going to be 1 stitch over. So I'm not moving any further to either side. I'm just going to go one right above. So just follow the chart. Okay, now I'm moving in the other direction. Okay, so now I'm going to go this way. I'm going to work 2 more rows of just these 7 stitches. Okay, if you look at this, there's 1 up here on each side. The problem is there's too many stitches between it, so what you're going to do is after you work this one, you're going to work this one and then come down here, skip this one, work this one, then go up to work this one, and then finish off with that one. So I did run out of yarn, so you need about 8 feet. So I had to cut a new one. It does use quite a bit of yarn, but if you have it too long, it's not very comfortable to work with. Okay, so I want to come out of here because I want to work 1 up here. So I want to come back down here. This is the center one we're going to skip. So I'm going to move over to here. Okay, so remember we're skipping that one. So I'm at this one here. Just like this one, I'm going to go up. So in here and then just right up above. And then my last one is right here. So I'm going to go in here and out here. And this is the last one. So you just want to weave in your ends on the inside. Alright, thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification button so that you'll be notified every time I post a video. I'll see you next time.